let's go to the new frames too. So this is the shit. Now it starts getting a bit theoretical here. Okay.
No, it's beginning.
Now it starts. Now it starts. So we have these interesting concepts that I think can be useful for understanding this, and we have this nice picture of being watched. So this is the concept of gaze, and let's just see what more we can understand of this with certain new concepts brought in from psychoanalysis. So we have the concept of gaze, and gaze is not something that you gaze. It's not you that gaze, but you are being watched. There is a gaze that watches you, and this concept of gaze is connected to two other things like imaginary and symbolic identification. So, on the level of imaginary identification, that is what you actually want, what you want to be, how you want to be, what you want to become. So if you are a woman, you are a pretty woman, and you want to be that, then you can say that this is what you identify with on the imaginary level, this prettiness. But then there's on another level you can ask, why do you identify with this? Why do you find this image of this pretty woman desirable? And then there is some gaze that watches this woman and appreciates her. And on the symbolic level, you identify with that gaze, which could be kind of a male gaze, and then you could do some kind of ideology analysis of this and say that women who want to be pretty identify with the male gaze. But this works, I think. Do you follow that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's like that you want to be perceived in a certain way here, or you want to be a pretty woman, or do you want the other one to see you as a pretty woman?
Yeah, but the thing is, consciously, you think that I like being pretty. That is what you think consciously about yourself. But then when makes an analysis of you and say that, well, in fact, what's behind this desire of yours that you think is so oskyldig, innocent. So we find this gaze that kind of constitutes your desire.
So if I had like a discussion with someone, I would say, I want to be a pretty woman. Wow, men likes pretty woman.
Yeah, men likes pretty. Yeah, like if you say that I want that because male likes that, then you're kind of conscious of that. But sometimes you could say that, like if you have had a hard childhood and you want certain things, then you could say, sort of kind of find out that you had some parent or mother or father that
I want kind of to be an architect, and you don't know why, but then you discover it's because
your father
liked the architects or
exactly.
whatever.
So when applied to mathematics education, you could say that you love mathematics, but why do you love mathematics? Because then that's because you identify with this setting that appreciates mathematical knowledge, and then that is mathematics education. So this is sort of the symbolic framework where mathematics and mathematical knowledge is valued. So this is a kind of first step of applying this conceptual framework. So mathematics education is not very desirable, but it's sort of the hidden structure that makes mathematics desirable because of the place it attributes to grades and things like that. You struggle to get mathematical knowledge, you get appreciated when you have mathematical knowledge, then of course you love mathematical knowledge, you have all these feelings towards mathematical knowledge, but there's this symbolic, kind of mechanical, you could say, structure attributing significance to mathematics and mathematical knowledge. And that's what you sort of identify with, that structure, with that practice or activity or ritual, when you, on the imaginary level, kind of want to have mathematical knowledge. So there's an interesting, I think, interplay here between the internal and external, because the ritual form pushes us into a way of being. We have constructed machineries of standardization, supervision, control to keep ourselves on track in the process. We learn to push ourselves. We can internalize the desire of this machine. We become self-guiding automata adapted to the ritual. We can not avoid learning how we are supposed to think, act, and desire. So
this is what we are actually learning, going through this ritual acts.
Yeah.
We are learning how we're supposed to think in a
and
way.
how we are
What
supposed
are we
to desire.
what we are supposed to desire.
Yeah, and like Slavoj Žižek, for instance, would perhaps say that this fictional world is a sort of a framework that lets us desire, that teaches us how to desire, because we desire within the framework of this fiction that we enact in education. And it has a kind of a logical or mechanics to it. So if we do certain things, we get appreciation, and it's predictable, and it has names to it, and there are like substances and entities that you can have and that you want, and you get frustrated and you struggle and you succeed, things like that.
Lots of objects of desire are constituted within this framework.
Yeah, problem-solving ability, for instance, that's desirable within this framework. And the obstacles that you need to overcome, they're also kind of constituted within.
It's a real drama.
It's a drama, exactly, or a play or something like that. Yeah.
Drama play.
Yeah. But then, this is complicated now. This is complicated. Because when we operate with this fiction, we realize to some extent that it is not reality, this fiction. But on the other hand, it is also real. So this is something that will be made more clear, I think, in this last part here when we go through the different frames. So, for instance, these fictions that you operate with, they can be enjoyable even though you kind of know that they are fictions. Like this is Christmas, for instance, Easter, or anything, or just playing. You can enjoy fictions even though you know that they are not real. So these are kind of enjoyable fictions.
Wouldn't you say that you enjoy them because they're fictions? You can enjoy them because they're fictions.
You can enjoy them because they are fictions.
If someone were to expect from you to really believe in Santa Claus, you would find that a bit
painful,
inconvenient, and all that.
Inconvenient and stupid. Yeah, but that's actually exactly how it works with mathematics education. I claim that, because the point here is that it attributes to you a certain position in a symbolic framework. Mathematics education it says what you should desire and what you should do and how you should think and all and things like that. And that can be kind of hard work. And this will be the most important, fundamental, and difficult point later on here, that you kind of are forced to love mathematics, basically. And you need to do it because you need to work so hard to get this mathematical knowledge, and it attributes kind of subjective position to you within this framework that says, this is you. You have this much knowledge, you have these desires, and in a way you have them, but in another way, and you have some distance towards these desires that you have. You have them, they are internalized, but you've kind of also been forced into mathematics education, forced into being this subject. And like this is when you talk about identification, that is kind of failed identification. People are not completely shaped by rituals, not completely shaped by mathematics education. You learn how to desire, you learn how to think, how to act, how to do it, but you also keep some distance towards it. And this is kind of a difficult fiction that you can want to avoid, because it kind of demands from you that you love things and want things that you, in a way, do not love so much. Like, who loves going to school? Who loves being in the mathematics education classroom, doing all these tasks? You learn that mathematics is something that you should value. And you need to, in a way, value it because you are there in school doing it. But in the same way, like, it's hard work, boring, it's stupid, you hate it, it's fucking idiotic. So this is a fiction that is kind of imposed on you. And that gives it a very, like, complicated position. And this, I think, is very important for mathematics education, and in particular for mathematics education being in a constant state of reform, because people kind of hate it. They want to change it. But they still kind of know that it's necessary and things like that. It's real. But I just want to just point out another way that fictions can kind of exist. Like if you Robert Fowler, who I follow in this kind of with these ideas, he writes about how fictions also can kind of be useful for handling social problems. So let's say you're unfaithful to your wife. Then if you have a convention saying that you can be shot by arrows by a god, and then you are kind of hjälplös.
Helpless.
You're helpless. You need to go fuck that woman. You can't help it because you've been shot by an arrow. That can sort of solve the problem, because then you agree that, okay, oh, well, it wasn't your fault, and I hope it will never happen again, because it was this stupid god. And even though you both know that this god does not really exist, it's just a practical way of managing this difficult situation. Practical for some of them at least, but still, like, this is how it can work, like in the same way as Christmas. This is something we do, we enjoy it, it's fun, but we know that Santa Claus does not exist for real, but it's kind of useful culturally. And
it's a kind of conflict neutralizer.
Yeah, conflict neutralizer. Like, well, I was caught by a demon.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of explain it, and you don't have to reflect on if it's actually true and real that this demon actually exists, but it's just convenient culturally to operate with the fictions, because it's really, really difficult to be rational all the time, and it's some things you cannot explain, and you say that, well, it was this god that made this shit happen, and then, okay, that's that, let's move on to something else. So fictions can be useful, even though you don't need to kind of know for sure that they actually exist. Like, who cares? It works. So fictions.
You don't set out to find the demon, the god, or the Santa Claus.
You don't kind of start doing physical research and then questioning. Yeah, like, you don't start that journey. You just stop, and why should you? Like, if it works, it works, and that's fine. Yeah. The point is that fictions can have different kind of statuses and different uses and different places in culture. And the fictions of mathematics education have their place and their function. And it's a kind of complex and difficult place and function. Yeah? Different from Santa Claus.
Yeah, it's different because you believe in this fiction in another way than
you
believe in Santa Claus.
Exactly.
Or not believe in Santa Claus.
Yeah, but then you have atoms, for example.
Yeah, you can believe
these. Yeah, and we never see atoms.
No.
And we kind of believe that they exist, but if you ask a physicist, he might say that, well, atoms are fictions because what exists are quarks, and maybe not even quarks exist, and superstrings exist, and kind of shifts what really exists. But they are fictions in a way that we operate with. But you set out
to find atoms. You don't set out to find
Santa Claus.
No, and you don't question mathematical knowledge either. It's not like you kind of
but you put lots.
It's an explanatory force, but you will never try to like prove it.
Well, there is kind of investigation into what is actually the object of concept formation. I know that there is an article, for instance, like what is a mathematical concept? How is it formed? Where is it? How does it exist? Things like that.
Yeah, but where is it? It presupposes that it exists. If you ask, where is it?
But that is how it is usually.
You don't ask, where is Santa Claus? Your children ask that question.
How do we make him come? How do we make Santa Claus come? How do we bring the conceptual knowledge into existence? So the questions are posed in a particular way, you could say, and it's posed in difficult ways. Okay, let's move on. even though you know that fictions don't exist, you can kind of be caught by them. Like there is addiction, for instance, that you can be caught in this activity of acting on fiction, so they can have a power and force over you as an individual, as a person, even though you know that this thing that you act upon is not really existing. So this is an important point with fictions, that it's not things that are necessarily real. Well, they are real, in a way. Like, you can be kind of compulsively wanting to watch football on TV, and it's just a game. It's just nonsensical, it doesn't have any kind of significance. But you can want it so much, and you can be really addicted to reading some book about something, like you want it really much. So our desire can be caught by fictions, even though we know that these are fictions. So this is another very important point here. So even if we are forced into mathematics education, like schooled into mathematics education, and the framework structuring desire there, and we can know that it's a fiction, we can still be caught by its imaginary and actually having the desires. Kind of, it's emerging within ourselves without us wanting it. We can, in a way, become addicted to it. We can become ambivalent towards it, because we are actually forced to go to school, and we are powerless there, helpless, because we do these things so many times, and so much the consequences of what we do there are so important, that we are kind of forced into, in a way, believing, in a way, desiring in the right way, even though we try to keep some part of our subjectivity outside of these dynamics.
But isn't this different from person to person? If you succeed within this framework, one can understand that you can be caught up in this puzzle solving, finding it extremely enjoyable and rewarding.
Yeah.
Because it is rewarding.
Yeah, it is.
But if you don't make it inside this framework, it's extremely painful,
yeah.
and you can't get out of it. You're not allowed to leave the game.
You cannot leave, but also what's most problematic perhaps is that when you fail to solve these puzzles, you still learn that it's desirable to be able to do it. So when you talk to people who have failed with mathematics education, still they say that, well, mathematical knowledge is so important, and I think it's beautiful, mathematics, all these things, but I cannot do it. So I don't want to work with it, etc., etc. So of course, like it's very different experiences that you end up with having participated in mathematics education. That's sort of like the canonical message is that mathematical knowledge is desirable. That's the same for everybody. But for some, it's like mathematics is for you, and you have it, and that is reflected in administrative systems that kind of rewards you for having it, and others kind of don't have it and have failed, and then it's appropriate that they are put in other positions in society. So, now we come to the interesting things, the difficult things. Let's say we have this imagery of mathematics education that is an imagery of modernity that says that we humans have mathematics and we teach everybody mathematical knowledge and we are great, we are gods. Like René Descartes said, the philosopher, that when we think mathematically we have like the same kind of thought that God has. But then you kind of realize that this mathematics education thing, that does not work. That is kind of stupid. Yeah, sorry about that. That's a ritual. It's pointless, boring, mechanical, and everything like that. And people don't learn. They don't get knowledge. They learn to solve these puzzles. Well, it's puzzles in school. You recognize that. And then it is as if you kind of suddenly realize that Santa Claus didn't exist, and you thought that Christmas was for real. You wake up and you see that it's not for real, and you want to just stop this nonsense. And people just go about and do it, and you can't make it stop. It's just this cultural force. It's so heavy. This has this inertia, and you try to reform it, and you just want it to go away, and you can't do it. And then suddenly, what's actually present, how people actually are, seem kind of pretty much worse than it would have been without this vision of what it is that we actually do. That kind of, it's like it creates this kind of split vision. You have the ideal of how it should be. Then you realize that it's not like that. It's a ritual, and then it becomes worse. What's actually present. Do you get that point? Like if it's I think
you see through it.
You see through it, but you want it to be real. Like if you had related to it as a fiction. Like I put. Let's take Homer Simpson here, and if he sees himself in the mirror like this muscular man, and it makes him happy, and then suddenly he wants this to be the truth, and he recognizes that this is just an image. Then he sees himself reflected, like compared to this He-Man in the mirror. And then he becomes much worse than he would have been had he not imagined that he was this superhero type.
Yeah.
And now we have mathematics education, and we have this idea of how people should be and what they should be able to do and things like that. And we measure people. Like we try to measure in this massive way.
So is this picture here?
Yeah.
It's like we have all these normal children.
Yeah, we have this normal. Yeah.
But in the light of what we wish, what we want with mathematical education, they look fat to us.
Yeah, they look stupid.
Yeah.
Everybody looks stupid. But as a collective phenomenon, you could see that this as kind of the self-image of modernity. So we think, and this is Bruno Latour again, and We Have Never Been Modern. This book is really good because we kind of imagine ourselves as being rational, not doing things like Christmas. At least not, like we have Christmas and we know that is Christmas, but our education and our science and our politics and things like that, we imagine that to be rational because that is our image of ourselves. All right, so this institution of mathematics education is supposed to be rational, and then, and we moderns are supposed to have mathematical knowledge. And what's perhaps the most important thing is that we are supposed to love mathematics. Modern people love mathematics because mathematics is a very lovable thing. We know that because it's true, and the world is mathematical, and since we have this rational mind, we love that's kind of, we should be naturally inclined to love mathematics. That is
loving mathematics is loving yourself in a way.
Yeah, that is loving yourself, like because we are mathematical creatures. That this is like the self-image of it's bizarre. And then we have all these children not loving mathematics, not being able to solve all these puzzles, and then we kind of. This is very, very frustrating for us moderns to recognize ourselves in this imagery.
Yeah, actually, we feel bad for them.
We feel bad for these children. How will they survive? How will they manage without this knowledge? They will never make it. And we try to help them. We have diagnoses for like ADHD to kind of explain why they cannot learn mathematics.
They can never be a democratic citizen.
They cannot participate in democracy. Nothing. Because they don't have this that we think that should be natural. And then it's
made true because we are like filtrating them.
It's made
children.
true. Yeah,
so it's made true.
It's of course exactly. So we enact this idea, and we think that we are so sorry. We need to kick you out to exclude you from society because you don't have mathematical knowledge, and we would so much have wanted to include you and make you participate, but we are so sorry we cannot do that because. And we try the best we can to create this education system.
We put you in 10 years of school.
to help you.
To help you.
And it's because these
Now
stupid
you have
teachers.
to take a summer course.
Yeah, you have to take, and you need to do lifelong learning.
Yeah.
And like it's because these teachers are so stupid, so they need lots of more competence, and these curricula, they need to be more clear, and we need to have like teaching teachers how to understand the curricula in the right way, and we need better teachers education, and we need better software in computers to teach children better, and etc, etc, etc. So this what you take the step from seeing through to the assumption that there is something that cannot be seen through, that is really real and true. You act on this. You have a faith, you could say. So the problem here, like the interesting mechanism here, is that what we have faith in, mathematics, as something that is lovable. You remember, like the first frame here, is that this object is constituted as lovable through mathematics education. Like that's the symbolic framework that makes mathematics something that you should love. So this is a circle. Like it's a vicious circle. It's really fascinating that this might be how it works. So since we have all participated in mathematics education, we learn to know that mathematics, that's the shit. That's what we should love. Science is what we should love. Then we recognize that this social institution of mathematics education cannot sort of live up to the standards of the objects that it has itself constituted. So that's why we want to reform it. So this is why it's so important to recognize that when we find that we are ourselves should be rational, loving mathematics, having mathematical knowledge and things like that, that's what we identify on the imaginary level, but on the symbolic level, we identify with exactly that institution that we hate and that we want to kind of abolish or reform. So this is strange, isn't it?
I don't understand.
You didn't follow that?
No.
Sorry. So why do we moderns why do we think about ourselves that we are rational? Why do we think about ourselves that we should love mathematics, that mathematical knowledge is important and things like that? Well, this desire that we have, or this self-image that we have, doesn't come from God, or it's not instinct. It is something that we are.
Provided by the ritual.
Exactly, it's provided by the ritual. But when we see the ritual, we hate it because it's stupid. But we do not realize that the things that we identify behind the ritual are put there by the ritual activity.
This is the meaning I don't understand. We don't understand. We do. What did you say? We see through the ritual.
Yeah, we see that it's a fiction.
What is behind it? What
like,
is it we
it's
see?
like what is it like? Let's take the fiction.
Yeah.
This fictional world.
We see
that we see through the fiction. We see, but not completely, because some parts of the fiction are kind of kept as real. So let's take mathematics education. You see that this pizzeria where you pay in Zs and things like that does not exist. It's just a stupid mathematics education puzzle. It should be made, and then we say more realistic because mathematics deserves a better mathematics education. But when we say mathematics as something that mathematics education does not sort of live up to, when we desire mathematics in that way, and when we put mathematics in that place, we do that because of the desire that has been sort of installed in us by mathematics education.
So we need to change the ritual in favor of mathematics.
That's what we think.
Yeah, we think that.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that if we had, let's say, removed the ritual completely, like stopped it, then people would no longer feel the need to love mathematics. So then this whole fiction where mathematics plays the center, the most important role, would sort of just dissolve.
Yes. So till then, we will just reform.
Yeah, we will reform. As long as we reform and kind of keep the ritual more or less in place, we can keep on reforming because we still have the desire, because the desire is kind of installed by the ritual. But if we somehow succeed in actually changing the ritual, then our desire will also change. And then it will no longer feel important to maybe like be rational in this way of loving mathematics, having mathematical knowledge and things like that.
Wouldn't we need to get rid of the ritual in order to get rid of this
desire? Yeah.
Okay, because you said if you change the ritual, but we will need either to get rid of it or to replace it with another one.
Yeah, we can replace it with another
kind
one.
Of messages.
Yeah, but then like this, we can have another process of like this is this structure of perpetual reform that has been analyzed for religion. Like, so if you have the reform with Luther and Protestantism, you have this idea of that you have this direct relationship with God and you have faith in God and that rituals are not important and they're just stupid. But if you removed all rituals, there would no longer be any God, because God is sort of constituted through the ritual. So if you have no ritual, then it is no longer religion.
No.
So this works the same for education as for church going. So Robert Fuller talks about this in terms of miniaturisering, that it gets smaller, the ritual kind of shrinks, and that was happen. This is what happens in mathematics education as well.
What shrinks? What is that? Is it like it becomes
Shrinks.
Less complicated, fewer things to do, or what is meant by shrinking?
Like is that when we do mathematics education, we sort of enact solving mathematical problems.
Yeah.
As if they were like out there in the world, but we want to remove all the parts of that enactment that we recognize as non-realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what is left?
What is left? Yeah, that's a good question. What is left? So this is I think this is difficult to this is like the difficult thing with rituals that are supposed to be rational, that they are in a process of change because it's not really a stable state for a ritual, because it needs to be seen through in a way.
Why?
Yeah, Why?
Why does it need to be seen through? This is the distance you're talking about. That
but actually, I will get to that here. Why it needs to be seen through.
Then I will wait.
Yes, good. So you end up in a painful process of trying to bring about that which you find about as being really, really true, like loving mathematics and
you're going to.
You end up demanding from yourself to think rationally, to seek the truth, to have a rational conception of the world. Like the problem here is like when I talked about some fictions being painful. So this is what something has happened here that is not so good for us moderns, because we identify with this subjective position that we should love mathematics. So let's move on here. Let's move on here. Let's say that you have this subjective position of like that you should be a person that prays. Okay? And you know that you're supposed to pray, but then you do not really like it so much. No. Then if you can set up these praying wheels that are driven by the wind, then that's a very clever solution, isn't it?
That's a rational solution.
That's a rational solution. But then you have some distance towards this idea that you should be someone that prays, if you can let these wheels pray for you. Yeah. So what about this idea of being rational? Like, why not letting someone else be rational for you? To create a computer that is rational or something like that. Then you can, like, let go of this idea. So you can satisfy this demand to be in a certain way, but without always being it. But we have a very problematic relationship to this demand to be rational in modernity. So we do not realize that this desire for being rational has been sort of forced onto us. We think that this is our true nature. But still, we do not like it so much. Like people do not love mathematics so much. So that they have faith, we have faith in it in a way. So we try to reform mathematics education. But personally, like we do not like to go to mathematics education ourselves, and we do not really like to use mathematics that much, and people do not go around talking about how much they love mathematics all the time. They want to do other things. So, luckily, it's possible to fool the gaze that watches us, that kind of wants us to be in a certain way. This gaze is stupid. It has a little brain. So it is enough to conform on the outside in practice, producing the right impression, giving the expected answers. And here, like when we fool this gaze, we fool something external, and that we know. Like if you go to school, we can do the tests, and then it's kind of enough to produce the right answers. But then we also can fool ourselves as insofar as we have internalized this demand to be in a certain way. We can actually fool ourselves. And this is fascinating. So Robert Fowler talks about interpassivity as a phenomenon, as a cultural phenomenon, where we kind of let other machines or other people do things as a stand-in for us that kind of relieves us from a certain demand to be in a certain way. So for me, for instance, I think that I should be an academic, a good academic that reads lots of books. But actually I do not like it so much. I like to do other things, like practicing jiu-jitsu and things like that. So what do? Well, I can download books from the internet, for instance. That is almost reading them, isn't it? So I have them on my computer, almost read them. And it kind of relieves me from this demand. Or I can scan them, so I can stand in front of the copying machine, and then I can think about anything I like not the books. And I just flip the pages and I scan it, and it feels like I've almost read them. And Robert Fowler talks about canned laughter on TV. That you know that you should have fun watching TV, but you don't really feel like laughing, and you don't feel like caring so much. So you have the TV laugh for you, and you're sort of relieved from that burden. And all these things are kind of clever solutions. But they have a difficult time, these solutions, because this sharp eye of us moderns demand rationality. So as soon as we recognize that, well, no, it doesn't work. It's the copying machine that you're just copying the books. You don't read them. Stop that. You need to read them personally. You need to read. You can't fool me. This gaze, this internal demand. Got you.
Caught in the act of...
Yeah, exactly. So this is what happens, for instance, when we have mathematics education and we find out that the children are just computing mechanically, for instance. No, stop that. You need to be sincere. You need to actually want it. You need to have this pure inner love.
Crave for genuine.
Authenticity.
Exactly.
It needs to be genuine.
Yes.
True rationality, true love of science and mathematics, and it's really painful.
Craving you as a person.
Yeah. So it demands that you, as subjectivity, complete subjectivity, are dragged into school and formed into being properly modern, properly rational, having the right desires and things like that. So we cannot put up this. We do not allow ourselves to put up this wind praying wheels. But we have this solution, and you know what the solution is? It is mathematics education. So we adults, we have kind of put it on the children to, like, as a praying wheel. Mathematics education works as a praying wheel. So we put the children in there, and through them we demonstrate how we think about mathematics, how we think about the world, and they enact it for us. So of course we love mathematics. We have this big institution of mathematics. Everybody does it. 10 years, 12 years, every day we measure their knowledge all the time. It's so important to us. But if you ask adult people,
they're not bothered.
they're not bothered the least. They're
bothered.
Just happy that they're out of mathematics education. But they, of course, they say that they love it very much. Very, very good. Very good.
They say it's important, but they don't say they love it.
Many people say that mathematics is very important.
Yeah, if you ask them.
If
but
you ask them.
They wouldn't
they don't
think of it.
Yeah, that's the good
Every
thing.
Every day.
When you go out of school, you are free.
And
this is your kind of sacrifice. You do it when you're young. You sacrifice to the sort of self-image of modernity. Now you have done your plight. You have done your thing with mathematics. Now you're free.
Going to the army, and then afterwards you can just leave it behind.
Yeah, but we leave it behind. That's how it works. Like you.
If you were not if you were rewarded.
No, but we it's this is like the liturgy. This word, I looked it up on Wikipedia. Like it's a communal response to the sacred through activity reflecting praise. It's a very good definition of education. So this is a response to what we hold sacred, and it's science.
Yeah.
And we have this activity reflecting praise. But we don't want to do it ourselves. We are very lazy in relationship to science. We don't go to church. As adults, we don't do that. We let our children do it. And if we were more kind of rational, we would shorten it down a bit. Because it's so painful, it takes so long time, and it takes so much effort and resources. Why not like that? Just have 2 months for 7-year-olds. Praise mathematics and science in some crazy institution where you enact this problem solving and things like that. But we don't do that. We have this huge institution and this huge enactment of being modern. That is what people do in mathematics education. They enact being modern. So this is the enactment of life in the modern world. Why we do it? It's
like a screen. Imagine that there were no school. Then there would be no movie about the modern world.
No, exactly.
That we could watch and learn from.
Yeah, it's a movie. It brings also, it kind of, this is what brings modern culture together as modern, as scientific. It is brought together in the different school subjects where mathematics is just one of them. It brings these different elements together in the way that we imagine that it should be. Like that you use mathematics every day, you use mathematics in professional life, you love mathematics, you value mathematics, mathematical knowledge has effects, it is important to have it. All these things are enacted as a fiction. And that is, like, it's interesting that in this psychoanalytic theory, it is said that reality has the structure of a fiction. So what is actually real? That is for moderns. What is the modern world? That's a difficult question, because this fiction that is enacted in education, well, we know that is a fiction. But if that is not reality, what is reality then? Well, we have all these different spheres of culture, but they are sort of like different realities. So it's difficult to say what's sort of really real for us moderns. Yeah. Any questions? No. Good.